Brand new edition of the Winning Plays podcast this year. The Boston Celtics have advanced to the second round of the Eastern Conference playoffs, the only team in the NBA to sweep their first round series. And there perhaps should be no man taking a bigger victory lap right now than the one and only Chris Forsberg of NBC Sports Boston, who I don't think anyone locally was picking against the Celtics in this series.
True.
Nationally, there was a lot of people picking against the Celtics. I think there was more ESPN picks for the Nets than the Celtics, which was wild to me. Which shows me just how many people watch the Celtics over the last 3 months and the Nets on top of it. But Chris Forsberg from the jump was like, listen, Celtics in 5, like maybe, like these Nets are not good. Even with your guy Rob Williams down and out, stuck to your guns, and lo and behold, you were wrong. You gave the Nets an extra game.
Too many. It's funny because I'm not the kind of I say wild things, but I don't normally put predictions like that, at least that bold, try to be nuanced. And well, if Kyrie got it going, but at no point did I feel like this was going to be a close series. And maybe I saved for the final minute of game one when I'm sitting there going, oh boy, I might have made the wrong prediction here. But you could tell once the Celtics took that game, even when they were down 17 in game two, my buddy came over and was like, what do you think happens here in the second half? I'm like, they should be thanking their stars. They're only within 10. I mean, they're down 10 because it felt like they were going to come back. Like I just feel like the Celtics were the better team decidedly in this series, and they proved it over the course of 4 games. Now I know we'll sit here and say, oh, it's the fourth least spread between a sweep opponent, and they all were crunch time games. But to me, that's just another thing in Boston's favor. I didn't think the Celtics could win crunch time games coming into this, and here they are. They won 4 of them. So a lot of reason to be excited if you're a Celtic fan, because even though I thought they were going to win that series, the way they did it is still impressive.
Yeah, just all the boxes they checked. It's like from game 1 to game 4, from obviously the last minute of game 1 to the bigger comeback in game 2 to kind of the wire-to-wire situation in game 3. And then Monday night, oh yeah, let's just throw in the Tatum fouled out wrinkle in the last 3 minutes. Let's see if you guys can do this without the guy who's been going supernova in this series. And check.
Every single thing. I mean, 4 unique ways that they had to win. Like you said, the last 2 games, I think, were both wire-to-wire wins, right? But they had a stiff arm about 50 Nets charges in there, and they hadn't been good at that this year, where it felt like the wheels were coming off and they couldn't quite catch themselves. I think back to, you just used a demarcation point, January 6th against the New York Knicks, and they cough up that 20-point lead, and it feels like, the season is just over. 18-21, 11th place in the Eastern Conference. I mean, the 3-month stretch has been remarkable, but the way they're playing now and the resiliency that they've had. I'll say the person that really needs a bow, and I wish I could remember who the author was. Whoever wrote that story for The Ringer and said that crunch time in the regular season is not indicative of what happens in the postseason. Yeah. I kind of scoffed at it. I was like, I don't know. You are what you are. There's no correlation. The Celtics have somehow figured out how to be good in crunch time. And wow, like that's what blows me away, because I thought when things got tight, they would be not as crisp as we've seen. And in every step of this 4-game sweep, they found a way to be great. I mean, like a plus 50 net rating in those minutes, and outscored the Nets by 15 anytime it got within 5 points in the final 5. So shout out Celtics, Ime Udoka. I don't know when it happened. You weren't winning games like that against Dallas and Miami late in the season, and yet when it mattered most, you did.
How much do you? It's really tough to factor in the Brooklyn, like, into the crunch time situation, like their defense. And you have to give a lot of credit to the Celtics for what they did. It's the playoffs, tight situations, no matter what. But then you're like, okay, what does this look like against like an NBA defense? And I like
fair.
And that is like the only, but that's not really a knock. That's just like, we'll find out. Like the Celtics, again, should deserve all the praise. And it's like, I still think the Nets are a good team, like, and should have would have certainly taken a couple games from other contenders in the East in the first round that weren't the juggernauts that the Celtics are. But it is just fair to wonder, just like, with the personnel and everything they had going on there, how is this inflating the Celtics a little bit, or were they just this good?
It is a great question. I still think when you have to get past two guys that have won championships and who have thrived in those moments in the past, even if it does feel a little bit ancient, and I do feel like sometimes Kyrie lives off one shot in 2017, it's still something. And hey, if it's nothing more than exercising those, like Kyrie came into the Garden and did the whole sage thing. This feels like, from the big picture, this is the Celtics saging everything, and like sort of getting rid of those vibes and just moving past him. And for Tatum to take down Durant the way he did, it is huge. I just think there's a different level of confidence for this Celtics team now going into this Milwaukee series. And yeah, we're getting presumptuous there, but
no, we're not.
No, I know, but. Alex Caruso could really, change the series. So, but I wonder if it had played out any differently. If the Celtics had beaten the Bulls and then, now they're going up against Milwaukee, do they have the same swagger? Do they have the same confidence? I think having won this way against this opponent does matter in the grand scheme of looking ahead now. And while before I was probably leaning towards the Bucks in terms of just being the better team, I'm not as confident. Part of that is the Middleton injury, but yeah. So just shout out to the Celtics because they took on that challenge and now they're sort of reaping the benefits from it.
Yeah, there's no questioning the wave of like positivity you're getting. Like there's you wouldn't see the excitement on the bench in Game 4 after a sweep of the Bulls. Like that's a team that had been falling apart for months, and they showed a little bit of a fight in Milwaukee earlier this season, but they've shown their true colors in the last couple of games here. And yeah, like with the Kyrie factor, with like the Durant, with the proven veterans on that team that just don't have much left, but still are like names that those guys respect. And then on top of it, it's like, yeah, we did this, we took the challenge, and now we have home court. We have that like to hang our hats on, as opposed to going for the three and then being like, oh, like that was dumb. Like, why did we do that? Now we're kind of hamstring ourselves for this next series.
What was your favorite thing from the series? Is there one moment?
Ask you this. I was just going to ask you. Yeah, I was going to ask you like what stuck out to you the most about this series. This is funny that you're
so that's crazy. I tried to take over the host role. Threw it right back at me. Honestly, that Grant play where they call timeout with 4.5 minutes to go, and Grant starts to head towards the bench and then realizes it's like, no, wait, and goes and defends Durant to not let him get a shot. I can't tell you how much I love that sequence because Celtics have a good game one against Durant. Everyone's like, oh, he's going to bust out. This is just a fluke thing. And Grant showed up at that marathon press conference he had at the Auerbach Center. And one of the things he said was like, we have to defend Kevin Durant straight up until he get in a cup to go get water. And it was like a funny line, but then he backed it up. And I felt like that was like a little, if you had to distill the sequence, the series down to a sequence, Grant Williams kind of being a jerk and following KD so he doesn't get off a little after the whistle jumper was a microcosm of the series where they hounded Durant at every turn. And it was clear I equate it to whenever the Patriots would struggle in the postseason, like every Boston fan knew if you put pressure on Tom Brady, probably the easiest way to get to him and like make things interesting. And it was clear Ime, with his intricate knowledge of the Nets, said, we're just going to make Kevin Durant as uncomfortable as possible never let him catch a rhythm, never let him get anything easy. And that will make things difficult for this series. And from the first minute of game one to the final minute, with Grant Williams following him all over the court and probably into the locker room, they hounded Kevin Durant. And so I just think that's really cool that they got complete buy-in on something that was a priority in this series, and they never relented on that, even on the night that Kevin had it going about as much as possible. I don't know if that will translate to the next round. We'll get to that eventually. I keep hating how much I want to look ahead, but to me, that was the coolest moment. Is in a series like there was a lot of them. I mean, just the patience of Marcus on game one, Tatum going supernova and elevating to like a superstar with his two-way impact, but I don't know. That Grant Williams sequence will stick with me for a while.
I think Grant Williams' play, I think that sequence like you described is perfect. I think his play in this series was the sneaky, like, underrated development of this series.
You can make a case. They don't win game 2 without his end of first quarter offense to keep him in that. And you can make the case they don't win last night without what he did on both sides of the ball. There's like a legitimate case before I'd get to, like, everybody was kind of good in moments. Like Al hit way more 3-pointers than I thought he would. Jalen was great in fourth quarters. I mean, Tatum was just phenomenal. But even Tice had some moments.
Tice had good games.
And he had bad games. But, Grant, I did not expect the role players in this series to be as good as they were. I thought they would be good at home, and I think they would struggle on the road. For Grant to do what he did is really remarkable. And even Derek White, like I wanted to throw my remote 4 times last night because he couldn't make a 3 when they were trying to put that game away. But, I mean, his attacking and his making good things happen were all positive. And Peyton Pritchard had 2 great quarters. And I don't know, like this team is rolling right now and getting contributions from everybody.
It is. It's absolutely wild. Derek White was maybe the one like guy you could say, oh, he had a tough series. But then you look at the stuff he did in other parts of the game. It's like, no, he had a bad shooting series, but he was still useful out there for at least a couple of the games. And even when he had bad games, Ime Udoka went away from him, which is perfect. It is I need to get some Powerball numbers from Ime. Like I just like life advice right now, because I mean we've talked about this leading up to this, but to do it in the postseason and to push every single right button along the way
with Nia Long tweeting brooms and putting even more pressure on you is remarkable. Yeah, like there was a point in the season, and I'm sure you can go back on a Celtics talk or a Winning Plays pod and probably find it, where I was like, I just don't know what Ime's pushing pretty hard with these guys, hasn't been able to get them out of bad habits, like some of the rotation stuff back in the Smart and Schroeder days. I mean, it was fair to question him and be like, is he going to get this? And I was worried coming into the playoffs, would he make adjustments quick enough? Would he be able to play the chess match? Dude ran circles around Steve Nash, who, again, is probably just sitting there like, what am I supposed to do? I'm just kind of the coach in theory. There's your coach, Kyrie's being crazy and moody over here.
No,
so
management, Kyrie.
Yeah. So he's now the front office guy too. What a wild. God bless all of our friends in the Knicks beat who have to deal with that. But yeah, Ime has, and again, I think Ime's cool, calm confidence has finally rubbed off on this team, whereas we didn't see it often in the regular season, but they never got rattled. They never got sped up. It was just felt like, oh, Tatum fouled out. Well, we'll just find a way for Jalen to make plays and get to the finish line of this game. So, yeah, I mean, good on them for everything we thought we knew about this team and more now is trending in the right direction.
Can we spend a couple minutes on Kyrie?
We can. I'll let you lead that.
I just want everyone to have the appreciation of like the ride he took us on in this series. From a media perspective, he's put about a year's worth of like gold quotes into 10 days. He went from, even before the series, saying, yeah, let's put my highlights back up from those glory days at the TD Garden. And he tried to recreate it with his effort in the last 3 games of this series. Literally disappearing before our eyes, making countless mistakes and like half-assed maneuvers defensively. But just the lack of awareness from him it's something special. It's like, I don't know if you're not going to see someone like this with this type of, obviously star appeal around the league right now, just have this like on a day in, day out basis. And if you're the Brooklyn Nets right now and you're trying to piece together, okay, how do we move forward right now? Like Kyrie has you boxed in a corner with his guy, Kevin Durant, who I think Durant now is officially probably has soiled his legacy long-term by hitching his wagon. And because now there's no way out. There's no way out for anyone involved. And I don't see how this ends badly in what looks like a pretty loaded East for the foreseeable future. I just don't think they get back here as Durant shows signs of like becoming human now.
Yeah. I don't have an answer there. I do think you add enough pieces around them and it probably solves a lot of what ails them. But certainly like the crazy factor doesn't go away. And Kyrie is still going to be saying and doing crazy things and suggesting he's the general manager of the team. And I mean, even Durant. I mean, Durant's quote about how they're mad because they loved him and wanted to buy.
I forgot about that one.
I mean, all the Nets quotes in this series were just absolutely bananas. And in trying to explain this thing, I kept waiting for Kyrie to have the moment where he just started guarding Tatum throughout the fourth quarter of last night's game, and then he hit like a late game three to pull it. Maybe that was when they pulled within one or whatever. And I was like, oh my God, is Kyrie really trying here? I mean, you always knew he was going to pull the rug at some point because he didn't want to have to come back to Boston for Game 5. But it felt like he went off script for a second there.
He got it just close enough. He wanted, he needed to, because he's not leaving this team, so we can't like completely bury it. But we don't want to make that extra trip.
Do we rule out the fact of like Durant just somehow, hey, look, you got to trade me, and then you're not going to say I requested it?
It has to be on it. I mean, I think it's just like a matter of time when we get there. It's not going to happen yet, but you can just see how you can parse this out right now, where it's like, okay, Kyrie gets the max extension. They have Ben Simmons on the Ben Simmons trade value right now has to be like beyond negative. And
how about Kyrie coming out in support of Ben Simmons?
Oh my God.
I mean, I can't, I'm not in a locker room. I don't know the situation. I don't know the full dynamic. I assume there are people in that locker room that are looking at Ben Simmons and his orange pants and thinking, what the hell? I think all of us are aware of, mental and physical and all that ailments, but it's got to be tough for some guys to look at him and be like, why aren't you out here in this series?
Camp, who is leaking this stuff? It's like, it's 100% like the misman. Like, I sympathize with Ben Simmons to a degree. If he, you're trying to come back for the first time in a year, and I believe the back stuff was legitimate recently,
for sure.
But the leaks that a tale of two teams. Like, look how the Celtics handled Rob Williams, and look how the Nets handled Ben. It wasn't, and I'm guessing it's not. Look how Rich Paul handled Ben Simmons. And
I still can't get the end game for Rich Paul with the why they would leak all that information about him wanting to be back out there. I mean, unless they were certain that this was going to be a sweep.
Right. Or they want to set up him being hero and Nets are down 2-1 and here comes.
Right. And he came back. I don't know. It defies reason for the swings. And you always knew. And just like you said, I thought that was when I looked for like a perfect example of why I thought the Celtics were going to win and the Nets were going to lose this series. I say the injury management. Celtics know full well all along that Rob Williams is going to be ready about the 3-week mark, and they just need to kind of test him out. And they knew that at some point they would just sort of ease him back in and see how it goes. And everyone's on message. Everyone's on brand. Brad Stevens was not going to tip that secret. I saw him in the hallway at TD Garden. He was going up to do our pregame show. And I said, as he was heading up, I said, this is a good time to do this because you're not going to get any tough questions. It's all sunshine and puppy dogs when you're up 1-0 and all that. And then the only thing he had to evade was the question on Robb. And I saw him coming back down and he was getting off the elevator. I said, nice job dodging the one tough question. And he said, you won't hear me say anything about that. And I thought in the back of my mind, yeah, because Robb's coming back early and you're watching how Clutch is handling this other side of it with Steve Nash saying, I have no idea what's going to happen here. And thinking, man, one team that everybody was pulling on the same way. And then there was the Nets, which were just chaos.
Robb, we haven't touched on your guy yet. He's back, I guess, a great 2 inconsequential games for him, I would say, in his return. And so here's my half joking question for you now. How long does he come off the bench moving forward?
No, he's back in for the start of round 2.
But you're going to break it up? You're going to break up the 4 now?
Yeah, come on. I mean, I couldn't have you being serious there. I was really worried that you're all enticed. No, there's no good answer. You know what? You could actually convince me if they had an Aaron Baines type or something that maybe it would make sense to keep Robb on the bench and to have but no, even that I can't quite convince myself. I don't know how they're going to scheme it defensively here. I think we'll see a lot of Grant. Like, is Grant the new Giannis stopper?
Yeah, we're going to see all sorts of Grant.
So, I mean, I guess you could make the case that if Robb, for whatever reason, isn't full Robb yet, but he's going to have 5 days or whatever here, 4 days, whatever it ends up being. So I just don't see a scenario where they don't go back to Robb in the roamer role. And but that's going to put a lot of stress on Al Horford on that back line to be sort of the what he was against Giannis years ago. And again, he always had the luxury of Aaron Baines back there to club Giannis when he got to the circle or whatever. So very interested to see what Ime does, because it's not going to be. It's crazy to say it's not going to be as easy as defending Kevin Durant, but at least Durant you could bully and make physical and hope that he missed shots. I'm not sure it's as easy with Giannis, who is going to just be a steamroller going at the basket. And you either need Smart to get a billion charges or Grant to do Grant things at a very high level. And you need Al to be great. And you need Robb to kind of shake that rust, because even when Tice was struggling, I was like, man, Robb isn't much better out there right now. And while he was the lob threat, and he, just wasn't, you could tell he wasn't himself. You can tell very early when Robb isn't feeling it. And hopefully some extra days of rest will get him closer to what we know.
Well, it's just, wow. I mean, you look at how the Warriors have handled Steph Curry. I mean, him coming off playing 37 minutes off the bench in game 4. And so, yeah, I have no doubt, obviously, like once they win that series, like they make that switch. But it is one of those, like, just the Robb factor in a matchup like this. Ime has done very well so far, but just being, like I said, having that recognition early, like, okay, does Robb have it yet? Or is this like, this is not a Robb night? And making that pivot promptly, which he did well throughout the net series in all sorts of situations. And now, but obviously the calculus becomes a little bit tougher now a lot tougher now with the Bucks likely waiting in a first round series.
Who are the Bucks defenders that they can pick on?
I think you start with Grayson Allen. I mean, and what the artist formerly known as Wesley Matthews, who I think who was a really good defender back in his day, and now it's just like
now it's different.
Someone who can clearly be exposed against the likes of Jalen and Tatum. But yeah, to your point, I mean, the matchups in this series on both sides are going to be some really interesting choices, because it's like, okay, the Bucks have been starting Portis for Middleton, so they've gone like super big. And so if they do that like, it's like, okay, so what's going to go on there? Like, how are they going to guard the Celtics? I assume you put Drew Holiday on Tatum, and you put Wes Matthews on Jalen, and then what? You're now like Bobby Portis guard Smart. Like, I don't know. So maybe they make a switch there and throw Connaughton in the starting 5 before Middleton comes back. But yeah, the dynamics there are interesting. And then on the flip side, it's like, okay, who's taking the main? I mean, everyone's going to get Giannis at some point, but like how they kind of map that out.
I mean, it's so I guess in my head, I think Robb on Lopez and in the roamer role, and hope Lopez stays in the corners. But that just puts so much stress on Al to be like the guy around the basket. And I don't know, maybe have Marcus cheating off somebody and always being there. It's sort of the Embiid defense where, it's always like a quick double or something, and trying to force the ball out of Giannis's hands. But the transition stuff is what's scary, because if you don't get back and you're not making shots, you know how quick that can jump up. And I don't know if I have an answer to that. Whereas they would build the wall with Baines in the middle there or whatever. Not quite as easy with the personnel that you got now, unless they plan to like roll out Luke Cornett for 15 minutes per night. And, but I don't suspect that's part of the game plan.
You look in Toronto. There's one chance.
You did. Because we opened with predictions. How you feeling? Like I want to hold you to this one, because we still got some time to figure out how the pieces are going to look and all that. But how you feeling about Celtics in the series?
Yeah, I like the Celtics in the series. I liked them before even before the first round. I had them getting past the Bucks area. Now, having watched a bit of the Bucks here, and now you throw the Middleton factor in, and they say he's going to get reevaluated in 2 weeks, which would fall on a week from Wednesday, which assuming is at least going to be 2 games in the series. And I think that's best case. So I would be shocked. Sure. So you would think if he's getting reevaluated in 2 weeks, maybe at least out for 3 and 4 as well. And the Bucks this year, they're the defending champs, but the supporting cast just isn't as good. And defensively, they haven't been as good all year. And so when you look at the level that the Celtics are at now offensively, and you combine it with that, I mean, it's going to be a dogfight, but I just think that there's enough matchups that's way in their favor at this point.
Yeah, no, and I'm with you. I guess my fear is that I've always sort of thought like the Bucks, when necessary, have a level to go up. And part of that just might be Giannis. It's just like the Giannis effect. He just, okay, if he wants to win, it's really hard to stop. But yeah, I do agree. Not quite as daunting as maybe years past in terms of supporting cast, but still, you just know Connaughton's going to make 1 billion threes and that Bobby Portis is going to start a fight with Marcus Smart at some point. And like, it's going to be a battle no matter what. I'm more leery of this series, and I've been more leery of the Bucks really for the whole time. But I did say on our playoff preview, I thought Bucks in 7. That was before Middleton got hurt, and that was before the Celtics steamrolled through this series and got some inspired confidence. I'm probably swinging to the opposite side and thinking Celtics in 7 now. But I think it all hinges on, do they come out with the same gotta win from the start? You know, if they take 1 and 2 in Boston, and this is an obvious statement, but I feel a lot better about this series if they jump while we're assured Middleton isn't out there. If they play with their food, or if Giannis steals one here and then you got to go to Milwaukee and try to find one to get, you know, to sort of bring it back to 2. I'm a little less bullish. So they better come ready to play. And, you know, I guess I'm torn. Part of me says, do you want the Bucks to have to grind a little bit here, or do you want them to just get to the finish line and turn this thing loose? I think Celtics fans are going to be a little conflicted watching Wednesday night's game.
Yeah, it is a fair point. It is to take a little bit more out of them of the guys they have active right now. But if I'm the Celtics, I'm still rooting. Like, I want that series to get started. I want Middleton to be out of the picture as long as possible. And you look at matchups now specifically too, like off the bench, like you mentioned Connaughton, and you know Grayson Allen's been shooting the lights out. I feel like, you know, you think back to 2019 or just past regular season matchups, it's like those guys like killed the Celtics in that series. The George Hills of the road, et cetera. Like they would play their best minutes with Giannis off the floor. And I think, to Brad Simmons and to Ime's credit, I mean, they've built a team now where it's like, no, you have counter to those guys right now. You're like, Pat Connaughton is not going to take off because Derek White's around, or Peyton Pritchard will be, you know, able to handle Grayson Allen.
Well, you're saying this after like Bruce Brown, 3 out of the 4 games was dynamite, and then, you know, Seth Curry was pretty good. Dragic was probably their best player throughout the series, which is crazy to say. So I do think it all comes down to how much attention you're paying to the primary guys. Like, the Celtics loaded up on Kyrie and Durant. That means other guys are going to get shots, and you probably have to live with that. And certainly in this series, you'd much rather Connaughton and Grayson Allen be taking shots than Giannis. But I just think it's just more complex to put the onus on those guys in this scenario. And yet I say that, but Celtics have always played the Bucks tough. It hasn't mattered who's been available, what it is. These games are always close, and sometimes it's a Jason Tatum banked in 3-pointer. Sometimes it doesn't tip your way, and so I expect this to be a very like a super fun series. And really, it should feel like the Eastern Conference Finals, because no disrespect to Miami and Philadelphia, presumably. But I just feel like the Celtics are taking on the challenges now. And if they get through this one, it should be to the NBA Finals.
All right. Well, you heard it here first. Chris Forsberg on the record with his second round pick.
Celtics in 7.
Celtics in 7.
And then Celtics in 4 versus Philly.
Oh,
let's talk.
Right. Is the Raptors winning that series?
It's kind of hilarious. It's funny. I do feel bad, like, 'cause I did like Doc, but like, oh my God, it's almost like Claxton at the free throw line. How is it so impossible to win a closeout game for Doc Rivers? And good thing maybe he just wasted all his good closeout karma during the 2008 playoffs and the Celtics being able to finish those games out, because it definitely evaded him in 10 and 12 and now every other stop along his way. So I don't know, like, can we explain that? Is it possible to put into words why this happens?
No, I think that's the best theory I've heard. It's just like he made the deal. Made a deal with the genie or whatever in 2008. Said, all right.
He put all his karma into the ceiling at the Staples Center, and said, I'm going to come get it if we make it to the NBA finals. And then he retrieved it. And now ever since then, it has been missing.
Now he's paying back debts. The interest rates are flying up, and now
interest rates are skyrocketing.
They're killing everyone right now. Let me tell you. But yeah, that'll be fun to watch, to see how that drama ends up. If you're the James Harden factor into play there too, as another playoff question mark.
Maybe that's what we should have done. Maybe we shouldn't put all the onus on Doc that there are some other factors involved in the potential letdown here. But who would have thought that after 9 days of the playoffs, we'd be sitting here and everyone is most bullish on the Boston Celtics as the beacon of NBA excellence right now. So I certainly didn't think that in January 7th, 2022.
No, we have the tape to prove it. All right. Chris Forsberg, NBC Sports Boston. He's been a very busy man, and he will continue to be that. Celtics Talk podcast. You got Celtics Post Up coming up this week.
Yeah. Just keep hanging out. Even though there won't be games, there'll be no shortage of content, and I'll try to say some crazy things, and I'll try to take victory laps when I can. Yes. That Celtics in 5 is maybe my best prediction ever. Yes,
he'll be continuing. He has a whole week to gloat on that one. So, Chris, thanks for hopping on. We'll talk to you, I'm sure, later this postseason run. And in the meantime, rate, review, subscribe to Leading Place Pod. We'll be back with you guys later this week to take a closer look at this Bucks series and figure out how the rest of the Eastern Conference picture ends up looking.